Welcome, Plug into Your Life. I have Matt here with Team Psycosmos. And Matt, thanks for being on here, man.
Absolutely, Dylan. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yes, yes. Now, if you guys don't know, I'm really excited about this one because I feel like all of my research and 7 years of deep diving into topics and spirituality and religions and the truth. And once you start down this path, man, I get so excited because I was literally asking my spirit guides, and if you guys don't believe in that, whatever, angels, whatever you want to call them, there's the energetic beings, and I was like, how do I obtain this Christ consciousness, this ultimate love, and in all my work I'm doing, and this their video popped in my feed, and it's the sacred secretion,
hmm
and we're going to dive into this. I'll let Matt talk a lot about this topic. But ultimately, all the stuff that I've gone through, all the research, all the around the world has led me to this truth. And I feel like it's one of the most important things that a human being can ever learn in their lifetime. And it's one of the most challenging to obtain, in
Bingo.
my experience. I don't want you to claim that, but anyways,
hmm
I'll let Matt kind of dive into this.
hmm
Matt, from Psychosmos. You guys have a book that just launched
Yes.
back in March.
Yes, that is correct. It's called Psychosmos, a synthesis on human history and spirituality. And thank you again for the introduction. Really appreciate that. It's basically the book is like 800 pages. We have a ton of resources, and what we've effectively done is what you said. We've done research on these topics for probably about 11 years now. Since we were young, I mean,
Mhm.
young men, really, really young men, 18 years old, really getting out into the world. We had all these different experiences, as I'm sure, Dylan, you have had. We were just talking about that a little bit. And essentially, the universe kind of led us down this path of enlightenment, trying to find the keys and the answers to some of the deeper questions of what humans ask themselves every day. Most of the time, especially when they're at the end of their life, they're asking questions like, "What is the meaning of life? What am I? Did I make mistakes? Should I feel guilty? What was it that I was really supposed to be doing?" A lot of people, if you're around elderly people, they can get to that point. Being in this new age of Aquarius, being in this new age of divine wisdom, where there's going to be massive paradigm shifts in society, we wanted to have a lot of semblance of truth. We saw that there was tons of misinformation, and I mean, this was going back even 10 years ago. What we wanted to do was we wanted to discover, what really is like the meaning of life. And one of the ways that I actually initially started getting into that was money. So I actually wanted to be really wealthy. I grew up super poor, and this was actually the thing that kind of led me down this trail. Once I started reading books like
Mm.
Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or something along those lines, talks about money manifestation and things of that nature. I started realizing that there was definitely a different way that the wealthy elite wrote and spoke and had their own communications compared to, basically normal people. Although I don't, what's normal these days. Um, so essentially, what I found was basically that a lot of the wealthy people, they don't go to church, they don't go to temple, they don't go to mosque. They're not in the main public eye like most other people are. They have a wide variety of these very strange beliefs, and I was trying to figure out why. A lot of that came down to symbology, which then, of course, leads into etymology. So symbology, studying symbols; etymology, studying the root lineage of words. And then what we ended up discovering after studying all these different world religions, trying to really piece together what are all these symbols and what are these people really after, I came to the realization that they don't even know. Now, these days, it's a lot
Yes.
more clear, and I'm going to get into that. But what we really didn't realize was nobody really had many answers. It seems like the people who did have the answers, all of them were locked away somewhere, maybe in the vault of the Vatican, maybe somewhere else. Who knows? I'm not the type of person who likes to dog on people or attack other people. What I like to do is search for truth. So where we kind of fell into this whole situation was we discovered the sacred secretion process. Now this came years and years and years and years and years of like you said, doing massive amounts of studying. I ended up just by complete happenstance of the universe taking a DMT trip myself. This was about 7 years ago, and that was actually one of the things that begun my journey. Just as like a very brief, quick story,
Mhm.
I did not know what DMT was. The only thing I'd ever done was like drank a little bit, smoked a little bit of weed, never really did experimentation with any drugs.
Mhm.
And through a wide variety of circumstances, um, DMT ended up falling in my lap. I didn't know what it was. I found out it was called the God particle. I was super intrigued by that because I was
Yeah.
kind of at the time, I was studying all these different religions, Norse mythology, Greco-Roman mythology, Egyptian mythology, Mesoamerican mythology, Chinese, Japanese, like all wide variety all over the world, and I was kind of struggling to see parallels. After I did this DMT trip where in the beginning I was like kind of agnostic, not really agnostic. I was more like a believer in the universe rather than what I considered a structured, Judeo-Christian God. But once I did my DMT trip, everything became clear. I had this massive, massive download. I met with my version of what God wanted to show to me at that time, or the universe wanted to show to me at that time. When I'm saying God, again, I'm not leaving it to a Judeo-Christian perspective. I'm going much higher than that. I'm talking about really all things. So I had a conversation with the universe, and when I did that, I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know really any of this stuff. But then I was told, you're going to go out in the world and you're going to discover all these truths. You're going to find that all these things are real. So what I did was I went and did my research. I read tons of books. I basically annexed myself from society, lived in the mountains for 3 years, read a ton of books, meditated, did a lot of yoga, did a lot of practices. I did a lot of experimentation. And eventually I came across a couple of different sources. Mainly, the one that kind of got us started on this esoteric journey was The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. So, Manly P. Hall was a Freemason who wrote a ton about this stuff. But I ended up having the privilege of being able to have access to a copy through one of my best friends and one of the members of Team Psycosmos, whose name is Rich. His grandfather was a Freemason, had all tons of these books. But the issue, and even Freemason friends I have today, they'll tell you that the Freemasons don't even know this stuff. The Freemasons are only now realizing that these
Yep.
were the lost keys that they had. That even back in the Knights Templar days, this is how far back this stuff goes. Knights Templar found all this, and then basically the church was like, "Nope, we're annexing you. You can't talk about this. You're done," because this is really the truth of the Christ, not just the person, but there's also all the metaphysical things that
Yes.
go around that, and that might be a testy subject, but we're going to get into it. So essentially, what ended up happening was, after I did this DMT trip, I found all these books. Some of these books are really expensive. You never normally be able to get them, especially not for a guy who was poor like me. And I was very, very poor. I was living on very small means, and I was fine with it. Like I didn't mind it. But then after I learned how to manifest and everything, in a few short years now I make 6 figures a year. So the reason
Yep.
I was able to do that was through manifestation, through the process of the sacred secretion, which is internal physical alchemy of the body. A lot of people have been seeing the video of Jim Carrey going around recently talking about
Mhm.
it. We discovered that back in like 2016, 2017, 2018. Whenever that video first came out, it was
Mm.
somewhere in that range, and it blew my mind. I didn't really know what he was talking about, but then I eventually did more research. I discovered what we were really getting into, which is sacred secretion. So, what is the sacred secretion? It's a long backstory, but it takes a lot of preparation. I'm kind of slow when it comes to that sort of thing. So, sacred secretion, what is it? It's a biological process that your body undergoes. In the very beginning, early stages, when you're learning these things, it really is more dependent on external forces. The whole reality, the whole purpose of this process is to master it so that you can activate it within whenever you basically want to, which should be. You should essentially be doing it whenever you can. You should have your own habits and your own life cycle approach that is super healing and positive for you. And this plays into those sacred secretion elements. But in the very initial beginning, basically, this is a process which undergoes in everybody's body and nobody's really aware of it. The evidence
Right.
for this, there's tons of it, but the easiest one to point out is it's linked to a woman's menstrual cycle. So
Mm.
real and I've talked about this stuff so deeply and so heavily for so many years now that I've gotten good with these examples, so I kind of make this very easy for people to understand. But just like a woman has a cycle where, after a 2 week period, she menstruates, which is kind of a low down period. And then after 2 weeks, she ovulates, which is kind of like this high energy, I want to make a baby period. This is a cycle that is within women. Most women have this cycle normally. Some women have this cycle irregularly. Some women even go through menopause, but even if you have already went through menopause, you can still take advantage of this. But mainly the reason I'm pointing out the menstruation cycle is because this is the physical evidence that there is a cycle which is linked to astrological objects, mainly the moon. So if you didn't know, there was a scientist named Dr. Eugene Jonasz, who's a Czechoslovakian doctor, and he made a wide variety of discoveries before birth control came out. This was in the 60s, the 50s and 60s, and bleeding into the 70s as well. So Dr. Yonash, he discovered that roughly 70 to 80% of women menstruate and ovulate in accordance with the cycles of the moon. There's 28
Mm.
days in a menstruation cycle, and there's 28 days in a lunar month or a month, because we name all these things after planetary objects. I talk about that quite extensively. The 7 days of the week are named after the planets. The
Right.
12 months of the year are based off of the zodiacal signs, and then there's also 12 to 13 lunar cycles every year. When the calendar system was changed back in the Roman era, there was a reason for that. It was because back in the day, women used to basically wait. They would wake up and say, "Why is it that I bleed every seventh of the month?" Because it was mapped directly to the moon.
Mhm.
Why do I bleed every seventh of the month, but then like every 21st I ovulate? Why is it like so cyclical? And then the Roman government was like, "Oh, we better change this calendar system and make like some days have 20, some months are going to have 28 days and 31 days. We're just going to confuse the crap out of everybody so that it doesn't align properly, so that everybody, the women and the men, they don't figure out what's going on anatomically." That's my theory, of course, but essentially, every lunar month, which is roughly 28 and one half or whatever days, your body has a whole cycle where it goes up and it goes down. And at the peak of this cycle, or at the bottom, wherever you want to kind of juxtapose it, you basically, even for men, you have like a menstruation and a ovulation. So what does that really mean? It's a shift of energy within the body. The moon controls the tides. The moon rules over the water of the earth. Human beings are majority made out of water. Thus, it's not a crazy coincidence to say that the moon has a really good effect on people. In fact, if you go and you study criminology, they'll tell you avoid, doing bad stuff on the full moon because that's where the vast majority of the crime comes out. We're going to need more police officers on a full moon. We're going to need less police
Mm.
officers on a new moon. That's just the way that it works because the full moon, you're not supposed to have surgery on a full moon. Even doctors know this because of blood flow. If you, on a full moon, blood flows a lot more than it does on a new moon, theoretically speaking. So when you're under a full moon, you'll basically bleed out if you're doing surgery. So doctors even plan around this. There's a lot of sciences that are just really unknown to people, and that's again one of those things where we're getting into on the sacred secretion. So getting back on topic, um, once we discovered all these different things, we started putting all these pieces together. We realized that there is a biological process that you can take advantage of. It is timed, but once you awaken to it, it ultimately becomes your own little baby, right? So this is really the
Mhm.
analogy of Jesus or Krishna or Nisha or Balder of the Nords, or really there's like a ton of different deities that represent this. Bacchus, Dionysus, even Asclepius a little bit, Ophiuchus, Mithras. There's a wide variety of characters. Apollonius of Greece. A lot of these characters are all healers. They're all messianic figures, Messiah figures, which of course in Hebrew, where we get the word Messiah, the word the word Messiah in Hebrew means the anointed one. It comes from the word Mashach, and if you study the
Mhm.
Zohar, which is like the Japanese, or I'm sorry, the Japanese, if you study the Zohar, which is the Jewish uh, basically they're one of their big tomes. It's one of their most important tomes, next to like of course like the Torah and the Talmud. Although I consider the Zohar pretty high up there. The Zohar even talks about the sacred secretion, and it also details that the purpose of the Kabbalah, which is the tree of life to the Judeo-Christians and the Gnostics and the Hermetists, the Kabbalah is the purpose of this pathway to God with all the 10 sephiroths, the 11 sephiroths. The purpose of this is to fulfill what's called the mashak. The mashak is the anointment, it's the oil.
Mm,
Jesus Christ, Yeshua, Christos. So his name, Jesus Christ. It's actually Jesus the Christ. It's Christ is a title. It comes
mhm,
from Greek for Christos, and there's a ton of other words that also are linked to it. Basically, it means oil. So it's
mm,
Jesus the Anointed One, Yeshua the Anointed One. This is who we're talking about because everybody's starting to realize, oh, his name wasn't actually Jesus, it was Yeshua. Well, the reason that this is all important is because baptism by fire. What does baptism really represent? What is transubstantiation in the Catholic Church? Eating the bread and drinking the wine. What does this all really represent? They're all analogies for internal alchemy. Your body is the most complex and complicated machine that it has ever been created in existence. Everything from like a lever to camera or whatever is all found within the body. And basically, we looked at the human body. We cut open the human body. We studied the human body very extensively because we believed, our ancient ancestors believed, as above, so below. If God exists, we're going to find it in here. And we did. And it's called the sacred secretion. It's called the chrism. It's called the kundalini. It has a wide variety of names because a bunch of different
mhm,
cultures discovered it. And they're going to discover it because it's a universal truth. It's just going to have a different name because different cultures. So what we do in our book and what we do in our teachings is we just combined all of these philosophies together. And so essentially, this is what the sacred secretion is. Sacred secretion parallels. It lines in tandem perfectly with all of the major world religions. That's a very, very, very bold statement. If you disagree with me, go read my book. It's 800
mhm,
pages. Then you can get back to
mhm,
me, send me emails, tell me I'm wrong. That's fine. But read the book first because what we do is we cross all those bridges, we cross all those gaps, and we show the similarities between what people were studying all over the world and how they were relating it, not just out externally, because a lot
mhm,
of these stories, a lot of people take them literally. It's all, they want to make it all external, but it's more internal because as above, so below, so as without, so within. There are processes in the human body that mimic all of not only the astrological things that are going on, but even higher than that in higher realms, higher spiritual realms, which that also gets very complicated. But at least with the planetary objects and such, we can actually prove a lot of this stuff because, again, as above, so below. So in the human body, basically what ends up happening is once you start puberty is very important. You hit puberty, most people hit puberty somewhere between the age of 12 and 13. Once that starts, the thymus gland, the thymus is situated right here. It's called it stems from the word tumos, which is Greek for the soul. So it's the gland of the soul. The children, basically, as they progress into adolescence, everybody knows that kids are like super innocent. They're super pure. They're literally the closest thing we have to like God's grace or the universe's grace, if you want to think of it that way. They're innocent. They're lovely. Everybody loves kids. Um, there's so the as when you go from being a child to a teenager, the thymus gland starts to shrink. It starts to release aging hormones and chemicals. It starts to change the body. When this happens, it unlocks specific mechanisms that are within the brain, within the genitals, of course, hormones and all that. But really, what this is doing is it's now allowing the child who has gone through 12 or 13 years, which is, of course, magical numbers, uh, now they're ready to progress into that next stage. And what happens during teenage years? Lethargy, depression, anxiety. They go from being these
mhm,
adorable, wonderful. Everybody was a kid. Everybody probably
mhm,
listening to this was a child, and then it became an adult, and everybody remembers those teenage years. The reason it's difficult is because we have not taught anybody, including kids, how to master their own bodies. If teenagers were doing less of what they're doing today, and they were taking more time to do things like meditation, yoga, being
yes,
grateful for things, then they would flourish into
mhm,
wonderful wonderful adults who are successful, open-minded, and et cetera, et cetera. The whole point of our society right now is to destroy,
Yeah.
everything that it means to be human. So they're trying to basically ruin people on purpose because they want to make a society of slaves. That's not the point of the conversation. I, of course, am rambling, getting off topic. Once you become a teenager, your body starts to undergo this process where basically the claustrum. There's a part of the brain called the claustrum. It's like a giant satellite dish, and basically what it does is it picks up on energetic frequencies really, really, really easily. It's probably one of the part of the brain that picks up on energies the best. And what it does is, and of course, claustrum is named after. Well, it's not named after Santa Claus. Actually, Santa Claus is named after the claustrum. Why? Because he wears red and white. He goes down the chimney, delivers gifts, and then goes back up the chimney. And this is the whole entire sacred secretion process. It's a cycle, just like the same way, as I'm going to detail. The same cycle that's within the body is the same cycle as how the sun comes up and goes down every single day, or how the Big Bang Theory, even if you want to get super meta and super big, Big Bang Theory explodes, it goes out, and then eventually it's going to suck all back into one point, and it's just going to keep doing this because this is a wave pattern. This is the universality of the wave function, of how waves work. Side note. Well, okay, I won't get into that. Anyway, I'm getting super excited here. So
Yeah.
wave functionality. That's what we're talking about. It's a roller coaster that happens within your body. You have ups and downs. Everybody has good things and bad things that happens in their life. So, where we've come now is the understanding of raising the vibrational frequency. Most people are living within the heart and the lower chakra system. If you like to go by chakras, it's an energetic thing. If you live in these lower energy points, then life is just going to be more difficult for you. Most drug addicts, sex addicts, alcoholics, abusers, etc. They live in that root chakra. They're not taking enough action in their life. They get angry super easily because they're swathing in all this negative low vibrational energy, and then they take it out on something else in existence. And your whole purpose is to really go from the root chakra and the heart chakra to the heart chakra and the brain chakra. You want to switch it so that you go from down here, which again probably gets hammered into you in your teenage years. You want to go from down here to up here, and this is a form of ascension. But it's super critical to remember that the human body is not a soul, it's not a spirit in and of itself. It's part of one giant collective. So I see a lot of people in the spiritual community who are like, no, you can never do anything bad ever. You can't eat meat. You can only eat fruits and vegetables. You can only do good things. And I gotta tell you, as somebody who, I mean, I went vegan for 4 months. I did a lot of experimenting with this. I've worked with hundreds of people, healing them. Your body needs a break. At certain points, you do need to lower those vibes to a certain extent. That's called relaxing. Everybody enjoys sex. There are times where that's okay. Everybody enjoys eating bad food. There are times where that is okay, but it depends on what you're eating. You can't eat. I don't recommend eating fast food. When I say bad foods, I mean like mainly like meat and dairy products and stuff like that. Like if you are trying to raise those vibes and keep them high, I eat meat. Not like super regularly. Maybe a few times a week. If I'm on my sacred secretion, I avoid it. But it's really about timings. It's really about having control over your life and balancing everything to a perfect point. The wise sages always talked about this, especially the Greeks. They said there's three brains, this one, and the one that's down there. I'm not going to point to it, but those three brains rule all of humanity. But the center point, this is where we have the hero's journey. This is where the Christ seed is born. It's right at the center point. When you go and you study a wide variety of stories, for example, the hero is always the one with the good heart. He's not the super smart guy, and he's not the guy who's got like all the testosterone who wants to go and have sex with all the ladies all the time. The hero is normally like pure of heart, pure of intention. He's really courageous, he's really smart, but those aren't the things that you qualify him as. You qualify him because he's the good guy. He's the hero. Well, how do you become the hero? How do you become a good person? It's here. This is the center of your toroidal field. This is the center of your energy. A lot of people want to just talk about living in the brain. I did that, and I'll tell you, you'll get exhausted really fast because your physical body can't keep up. Your physical body cannot keep up. I'm not recommending to do anything that lowers vibrations, especially if it's unnecessary. What I am saying, though, is that there are moments, especially which are like across from your sacred secretion times, where it's okay to dabble a little bit in lowering those vibes, relaxing a little bit, enjoying life just a little bit is okay. A lot of people don't want that. They're like, oh, well, it's all about the material world, and you want to ascend, you want to get out of here. It's like, you can't, though. You can't until you die. You're here. You're stuck here. You have to face reality. All of everything. If you believe in God, you believe in the universe, you believe everything is everything, all of everything. That means God had to lower his vibration just so that you could exist. God had to come down a step because essentially, if you believe in the universal theory, Big Bang, everything was one point, and the Judeo-Christians believe this exact same thing. Everything was one point, and then it disseminated and it spread out, and now we have the universe. Well, the only way it was able to do that was by lowering its vibe a little bit. And so what we're doing through this sacred secretion process is we're literally mimicking the same pathway that the creator, if you want to think of it that way, took source. So source basically bleeds down into this universe. This is what we have today, and it starts up here. All of the signals start up here in the claustrum, from the planetary objects. Once every lunar cycle, the energy goes down here, tells all these different organs, pineal gland, the two parts of the pituitary gland, because this is another misconception. The pituitary is actually two glands in one, so, because this is the holy trinity of the brain, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Brahman, Vishnu, Shiva, generation, oscillation, destruction, etc., etc., etc. The Father is the pineal gland. That's the one that creates the DMT. That's the one that's connected to the source. That's the one that's illuminated. The pituitary gland, pit, as in it's falls. It's the lower gland. Pituitary has two parts: the front part, which is the seen, and then the back part, which is the unseen. The one that's seen is representative of the sun. It's the lower god, the demiurge, in the Gnostic terminology. It's the god of the Old Testament. The one that's hateful and wrathful and etc. And then the one that's very hidden, that's the Holy Mother. This is why the Catholic Church worships Mother Mary rather than really epitomizing on Jesus. And that's been one of their biggest things that people have criticized before in the past. But it's all good. It's all good at the end of the day, because it's relatively all the same stuff. What I'm really getting at here is, the Trinity in the brain. This was considered the godliest part of the human body. There's 12 cranial nerves in the head, just like there's 12 zodiacal signs, the 12 systems that rule the human body. You have 12 apostles of Christ. You have 12 tribes of Israel. It goes on and on and on. 12 months of the year. 12, and again, this is all in reference to the fact that they wanted to, they cut us open. They said, well, there's got to be a parallel. 12 nerves here, and then, well, I guess we'll just divide this up into 12. And look at that. It goes into 30 degrees just perfectly. So this is really how a lot of the wise sages saw reality. Anyway, the energy from the sacred secretion, energy comes down, it hits into the brain. The claustrum activates, which activates the pineal and the pituitary, the release of the land of milk and honey. All these chemicals start trickling down. Endocrine system activates fully because of the pituitary gland is stimulated. And all of these things, all this energy and these chemicals start to rush down. Then your liver, your spleen, mainly the spleen's a big one. So the liver's over here, spleen's over here. Pancreas, kidneys, adrenal glands. I'm forgetting a few here, but yeah, a lot of these organs, what they do is they start to essentially start to secrete all these different parts. Mainly, the big one that we've been fixated on is the spleen. The spleen seems to be one of the biggest parts of this whole thing. In fact, the star Vega, which is in Capricorn, is associated with the spleen, and the star Vega is our Christmas star. The sun is over that star on the day of Christmas Day, which is, of course, what we attribute to the Jesus. That's what we return to Jesus coming back. He dies on the 21st because he's the sun. That's the lowest day of the year, and then 3 days later he rises again. So Vega, the star Vega in Capricorn, that actually is considered the splenic star, associated with the spleen. So the spleen is the house of bread, the manger. It's where the baby's born. It's also got red and white in it too. Again, red and white being the wine and the bread that Jesus performs his whole alchemy for. This is, okay, you will take my body, you will take my blood. This is transubstantiation, which that's what the Catholic Church calls it, transubstantiation. When you go and you look at the root word of that in Greek, I believe it's mitosis. Mitosis is what we're talking about. Your body has a hypermitosis period. Mitosis is, of course, the splitting of cells. This is what, Source did. Source split itself into multiple parts. It's the same exact thing that you did when the sperm hit the egg. When your fathers, everybody has a father and the mother, not just physically but spiritually. So when the sperm hit the egg and had this explosion of light, you just started to multiply, multiply, multiply. So the process of transubstantiation is a process of internal mitosis. It's a process of internal alchemy. So energy goes down, all these secretions go. They meet basically right here at this subcervical ganglion, which is right here at the central point of the body,
Mm.
connected to the spinal column, which is at this central point, it's connected to everything. This central point, the nervous system is the godliest part of the body. It's connected right into the brain, connects all the way down right into the genitals. Both male and female genitals are hardwired directly into the brain via the nervous system of the body. So all the nervous system knows everything. It's the thing that's really clear now. It's trying to make all these signals. It's what you're activating with kundalini. It's how you manifest energy. That's the most godliest or holiest part. It's a tree. It's literally the tree of life.
Mhm.
So this process, these chemicals go down. They situate themselves at the base of the spine and in the coccygeal sacrum. The coccygeal sacrum is essentially the brain of the base of the spine. It's the brain of the end of the spinal column. And if you take the spine, you flip it upside down, it looks like a serpent. So this is again a lot of the serpent terminology. The serpent in the Garden of Eden, the brazen serpent of Moses' staff, the Kundalini energy awakening and rising, a lot of these snakes, even on the rod of Asclepius to the Greeks, it has a snake on it. The caduceus has two snakes on it. Caduceus means the fall of Zeus, the fall of the energy, the fall of the lightning. Caduceus, it's the fall of energy. So this energy, it comes in first as an energetic frequency because that's what the Big Bang started as. Then it becomes more physical in reality, and then it goes all the way to the bottom. And if you're good and you do what you're supposed to do, you can raise this secretion because the sacral pump is a pump. Again, it's like a brain. So as I'm about to explain, the brain does a lot of flexing to release the sacred secretion. The pump, it has to also get worked so that it goes up. And the way that I've found the best way to do this is through yoga and meditative practices. A lot of other people have different things. Some people like to they like to run, they like to sprint, what have you. It doesn't matter as long as you're being physically active, you're not hurting yourself. And one of the big key points, especially for men, is semen retention, not ejaculating during the process of the sacred secretion. Because what you're doing is you're trying to hold on to all of the important nutrients, the vital nutrients, the vital parts of the human body. And then what you do is, as you pump this up, which is very difficult, you're fighting gravity. You're literally having a concoction of different chemicals shooting upward into the brain
Mm.
by through physical activity and all this other stuff. Once it gets up to a certain point, this is the Kundalini rising. It goes into the brain. It basically kind of almost cooks it. The pineal gland illuminates all this. All these chemicals get trapped in the inner thalamus of the brain. You will feel this if you activate and awaken this process. If you do this regularly, you will actually physically have a sensation from this. And basically, what ends up happening is this concoction, which is very plasma based, and the pineal gland like cooks it. If you want to think of it that way, it kind of rises like a yeast, but it's not yeast, And then basically what it does is it pushes on the internal part of the brain. Yeah, I know. It pushes on the internal part of the brain through the activation of the pineal gland, which then releases a ton of DMT, activates dormant brain cells, and releases cerebrospinal fluid. The cup runneth over, the Holy Grail, the Philosopher's Stone, etc., etc. These are all the same things. So then what that does is cerebrospinal fluid then washes down over the body and heals the entire body, heals the nervous system, the endocrine system, the lymphatic system. It restores and replenishes the genitalia of its needed juices and liquids and various things. And more importantly, it helps heal the spine. The spine, of course, being the rod of truth, the sword of truth, the flaming sword, a ton of different analogies. But that's the sacred secretion. Now, how does it play into Jesus? Super quick. It follows the life of Jesus because the one major part of the sacred secretion is, again, as I was saying, doing those right things, maintaining an alkaline diet. it's called the Christ seed, and this is of course a very big point of contention. Now, I believe that the Christ seed is mainly made by the spleen. I think if you have a removed spleen, it's mainly made by the liver. I don't know how you could function without a spleen and a liver. If you can tell me that, drop a comment, because I've never heard of anybody being able to survive without a spleen or a liver, both. There's plenty of people who ask me, well, what if I don't have this organ? It's fine. The body finds a way to recover. But naturally, if you have like a couple or major organs missing, you got to be hooked up to a machine. You're not really like you're not really living to some extent, and that makes it very difficult for your body to make this. But the Christ seed is essentially sacrificed. It's a part of ourselves which is sacrificed. This is like a plasma based entity thing, which is holds energy super well, but it will dissolve if it is in any form of acidity. So you have to maintain this alkaline diet, and then you have to raise it. But this Christ seed, it dies. It essentially disintegrates, which causes this alchemical reaction of turning lead into gold. Thus, it is akin to the messianic process. Jesus, in a lot of very allegorical ways, was talking about this to some extent, whether people know that or not. But that is ultimately my 25-30 minute spiel. I'm so sorry that I went on a ramble there. I just get into these modes where I just go on forever.
No, man, I get it. I do the same thing. So, and it's exciting. So let's unpack some of that a little bit. Um, so on a spiritual journey, so if we have people listening that are just beginning, or people listening that are deep into spirituality, Morgan Freeman did a cool movie called "What Is God?" or Finding. I forget what the exact title was, but
Mm.
it's on like the History Channel or whatever channel he did it on. Morgan Freeman. It's a movie about God, and he went around the world and interviewed almost every religion he could find. And at the end of the movie, he said, "You know, what's my point of view on God is or religion is that they're all right.
Hmm.
Like they're all like a piece of the puzzle, you know." And what you mentioned in the beginning about the Freemasons and all this stuff, because you see a lot of stuff on YouTube and when you start getting into spiritual videos, of course, the social media has algorithms which start showing you more stuff like that.
Exactly.
And if you start seeing all these like conspiracy theories on the Freemasons and all these Illuminati and all these different people, what you mentioned was what I found was that the people that are like the low level
Hmm.
kind of members, but they don't really know what's going on. I this is just my belief is that the low, even the Catholic Church, like I think the members are the financial support.
Bingo.
And I think that the elites or the ones that really founded all these things were not just the religions or the secret societies and all that stuff. It's really the world with the people that knew about knowledge. And you start looking on YouTube, man, you'll see the Smithsonian covering up finding pyramids in the Grand Canyon. There's hundreds of pyramids all over the world,
Hmm.
and like, so there has been an ulterior motive, what I found, for a script that people want the world to believe is the way it is because of money
Yep. Yep.
and the lower chakras, the ego, the negative energy. Now, again, this causes people to look at like good and bad or right and wrong, but I don't believe that's how it is. I believe that God is all of it. I believe that God is everything or God is nothing. There
Hmm.
is no in between, and I think you have to have both polarities to exist. But what I learned in my near death experiences was that this is truly just an experience. We came here to have an experience separate from the love of God, so we can live lifetime after lifetime to finally find the ascension of marrying the material reality, which isn't even a reality because it's 99.999% empty space of your
Hmm.
body,
Hmm.
right? It's blows. Anyways, see how I get excited too.
Mm.
But anybody listening, like, if you start down this path, it ultimately leads you to realizing that you are way more powerful than you know. That you are a creator, that you are of God, not separate from God. You are. of the same stardust of a star. Like all of our minerals in our body are the same things found in stardust.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I look at it as, I'll just mention this too. You mentioned that the body is representing the universe or God. And if you look at each cell in the body, they all have a separate job,
Mm-hmm.
and they all believe that they are their own little thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Doing their own little thing, going around, doing their thing. Well, it's just like humanity.
Yep.
Each person has an identity. You have a unique fingerprint, just like every grain of sand is different than the other one, which is
Mm-hmm.
mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
And I am here. I'm gonna say I'm part of the pineal gland
Mm-hmm.
cells,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I am judging the asshole cell,
Yeah. Yep. The
right?
rest of the other cells of the
Yeah,
body.
but the
Yeah.
truth is, and this is what I believe my purpose and your purpose and this purpose for people that are into the light and into the love are here to make everyone realize that we are one. We are
Mm-hmm.
one consciousness, one body, one unit. And as soon as we do that, we ascend our consciousness. And I believe that the whole universe is here watching. We have aliens and all these different things. Like, I think we're aliens, but I think, ultimately it leads you down this path of you can choose the negative energy,
Mm-hmm.
go for it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I went down that path, and it
Right.
just led me to depression and self-pity, a choice of self-service rather than selfless service or serving others.
Yep.
And you can choose either one. It's a game. I
Yeah.
believe this is just a big game that we are here to explore the different energies, and eventually you realize that you are the shadow and the light.
Mm-hmm.
You are the negative energy and the positive energy. And when you marry that, you marry your mind, your heart, brain and heart coherence. And what you're talking about is the astrology and all that stuff. I think everyone got into astrology when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Your sign and your horoscope and stuff. But if you pull yourself out of the painting, because when you're in the painting, you only see what's in that spot,
Right.
right?
Right.
And in my near death experience, it was explained like this: everyone's in this giant mansion, and you're born in a room, and there's books in there, there's videos in there, and you believe that your room is the only room to be in. You have to be in this room. My air is different than your air in that room. My air smells like pizza, and
Mm-hmm.
it's good, and blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. But the truth is that when you're breathing, it's all the same air. There is no different room. There is no different anything. And I think the great awakening that's happening right now is the realization that I don't want to harm you because I'm harming myself. When I'm angry, I'm really just taking a poison pill and expecting you to get hurt, you know? And we're just going to repeat life cycle after life cycle until we realize lessons of love, and using these tools of all the religions, all knowledge, and the age of Aquarius, everyone's finding out all the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it ultimately brings you to the sacred secretion, which is hidden in almost every symbol. The freaking American dollar, for God's sakes,
Mm-hmm.
has
Mm-hmm.
all these symbols on it. Like, no one even cares, like, why there's like a third eye on top of a
Yeah.
pyramid.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, just Google search, for
Yeah.
God's sakes. One thing, you are like one Google search away from changing your life forever, you know?
Bingo. That's profound. That's why we tried to
Dude.
focus just one topic, just one thing. Just learn the one thing. It'll unravel everything for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And, on I love what you just said, and I know on the topic of time, I don't want to take up too much. I've already talked like a whole bunch, so I want to just apologize. Just
No, we got
just
like 15 minutes here. We're
beautiful,
20 minutes.
beautiful,
We're good.
beautiful. I do want to detail one thing. This has been something that I've been very adamant about, just as not as strongly as sacred secretion. That is like the highest truth. But just as strongly, one of my biggest beliefs is also understanding, I guess, like the enemy, and a lot of people these days are like the rich, wealthy elite. It's these people behind closed doors.
Hmm.
Who are these people? Well, I can tell you who these people are. Have you ever heard of Sabadian Frankism?
Sounds familiar, but I'm not sure about that.
It's fine. I'm gonna unlock it. It's not anything bad that you can't talk about on podcast because I've talked about it plenty of times. They're sweating right now. So these elites who run the world, who everybody is pointing the finger at. A lot of people are like, oh, it's the Freemasons. A lot of people are like, oh, it's the Illuminati. First of all, the Illuminati, it's the Illuminati doesn't exist anymore. They're now called the Bilderberg Group and a bunch of other World Economic Forum. That's the Illuminati as you know it. The Freemasons, on the other hand, they got completely stripped of their really their main secret sauce hundreds of years ago after they decided to defy basically the rest of the world with the founding of America. Okay, so they got infiltrated. The Illuminati was infiltrated. All these people were infiltrated. If you want to get onto the topic of the Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, which is the guy who did it, he was basically they I don't think they were married, but they were together with Eve Frank. So I'm talking about Sabadian Frankism. Eve Frank was the daughter of Jacob Frank. Jacob Frank was a prophet to a specific group of people that I also share genetic lineage to. I'm talking specifically about this conversion that happened around the 1600s for people of the Arabic Jewish kind of group. So there's this guy named Shabtai Zephi, 1600s. He basically comes out and he proclaims that he's the return of the Messiah. He converts a ton of Christians and Jews, specifically Jews. And I'm Jewish, so this is how I know all this stuff because I met with Jews, I talk with Jews, I know a little bit of Hebrew, I can read Hebrew to a good extent, not like super perfect. I know the letters. I have broken bread with Jewish people. I know all about this stuff because of my own lineage. This is and now this is a
Mhm.
big topic because of Kanye West and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to get political. We're not getting political here. What I'm talking about is people who are pretending to be Jews, pretending to be Christians, pretending to be Muslims, pretending to be atheists, but they're not. They're called Sabadian Frankists. These people are the real people who are running, they're pulling the strings. These people believe in a concept that a lot of the politicians even today use. It's a phrase called tikkun olam, and it means to them, they keep saying it means restoring the world. It's not what it is. It basically means new world order. It basically means one world government, whatever you want to call it. These people back in the day, they dabbled in a lot of dark magic. Back in the day, of course, is like 1600s. The guy Shabtai Zevi, he pulled all this information from the Babylonians, the Canaanites, the ancient Sumerian cults. You know, a lot of people talk about Moloch and child sacrifice. This is what we're really getting into. This is what we're talking about. This is what
Yeah,
Balenciaga, all that stuff that's been coming out.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's because these people reestablished that form of religion back in the 1600s. They're called Sabadian Frankists, and essentially now they're these covert people who are told basically this: if we make the world an evil place, if we make the world a bad place, the Messiah will come. And when they say the Messiah, they're talking about the Antichrist. Of course, this is bringing forth that prophecy. So
Mhm.
so they say instead of us going up to God, we should just bring God down here. We should make it so bad down here that God has to intervene. That's why you're seeing the destruction of the world play out, unfolding
Mm.
right now. Instead of doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is going up, they want to bring
Yeah.
everything down. They want to, and a big part of Sabbatean Frankism is mainly two things: lying. It is it is actually they're told to lie on purpose. They are told lie on purpose. Lie to everybody around you. Tell everybody you're a Catholic. Tell everybody you're Jewish. Tell everybody you're a Muslim.
Mhm.
But don't ever tell them that we go and we meet,
Yeah.
every Saturday and we do horrible things behind closed doors. And then the second thing is they make everything physical. So the people who are responsible for the creation of Israel, which I'm not like saying anything about Israel, but Israel was never really a place. It's supposed to represent Isis, Ra, and El. Israel. It's the Holy Trinity. It's a form of
Mm.
Christ consciousness. It's a form of illuminated consciousness. Israel. Okay, it's Isis, Ra, and El. The mother, Ra is the son, and
Yeah.
Osiris is or El is Osiris, which is the father. So the mother, the son, and the father. So it's really, again, it's playing into that triplicity. It's playing into the Trinity, and it's supposed to be a form of your illuminated consciousness, not a physical place. What did they do with World War I and World War II? They made it a physical place. Why? Because they want to fulfill these prophecies in their own way. These are really the aggressors that are going after people's children. They're going after everybody. They're the Harvey Weinsteins. They're the Jeffrey Epsteins. That's what these people are. That's why they're occultists. That's why they're doing weird crap. That's really what's going on here.
I
Yeah.
do want to, like, I think too, like anyone listening about that, because you can dive into that and you'll skip all the videos and all the content for that stuff.
Hmm.
But I think like the more we pay attention to that, the more we make it, because I think where we place our attention and where we place our focus grows.
Yeah.
That's where our energy is.
Hmm.
So, like steering it back into the sacred secretion of
Right.
what I think all these ancient things are really hiding in the secret thing, because they know that people figure this out. You don't need medicine, you don't need money, you don't need any of this stuff. Like, we are the creators, we are the alchemists. We, you know,
Yep.
we can leave our bodies, we can like travel the universe, we can do all these different things.
Hmm.
So since we're getting to the top of the hour, I really wanted to dive into what are, like, if you had to say that somebody like already on this path of spirituality or trying to figure this stuff out, like what would you say would be your, like, your top things that somebody could do to start this process of accessing some of these chemicals that are found within our bodies that are in their cycles? Like, how does someone know when this sacred secretion is coming down based on their moon cycle? And what's, like you mentioned, be good. Okay, well, what are some of the things that somebody could take active practices in to help themselves have access to some of these Christ
Hmm.
consciousness topics?
Yeah. Great question. Okay. So a couple things. Number one, I think that stretching, yoga, meditation, physical activity, super important. The reason I say that is because this is what assists in releasing all of these chemicals in the first place. This is something
Mm,
that's super critical to the human body. Everybody needs to be more active in ensuring that their body is getting the right proportion of sunlight and water and stretching. I mean, you're basically a combination of plant, animal, crystal, hybrid, mineral,
mm,
metal hybrid. So we need those same functionalities. Um, Reading spiritual works is very stimulating. It raises
mm,
vibration. So if you're the type of person who likes to read the Bible, do that because that's a phenomenal way to do it. The way to tell the timing, so everybody should know what their sun sign is. That's like your horoscope. Oh, I was born in
mm,
November, so I'm a Sagittarius or Scorpio or whatever. You take that sign of wherever you were born. So let's
mm,
say you were born January 1st. That makes you a Capricorn. You were born right at the new year. That makes you a Capricorn. When the moon goes into the sign of Capricorn, you will have this process. And you want to do it so that you plan it so that when the moon goes into the sign before it, you're ready, and when the moon goes into the sign after it. So, using my example of Capricorn, if you're born January 1st and you're a Capricorn, you want to start doing this process when the moon is in Sagittarius, which is the sign before Capricorn. You
mm,
want to do it for the sign of Sagittarius, Capricorn, and the sign after Capricorn, which would be Aquarius. The moon is going to go through each sign for about 2.5 days, which means you're doing that times three, which means you're doing it for roughly about a week. So if you do
okay.
this 1 week out of every month, and it's out of every lunar cycle, one of the 7-day periods out of every lunar cycle of 28 days, then
Mm,
what you're doing is you're giving your energy, right? They call this tithing because the moon goes through one of these zodiacal signs every like 2 and somewhat days, and there's 28 days in a lunar cycle, so it's almost like a tenth. The Catholic
mm,
Church talks about tithing. This is really what tithing is supposed to be about. You're supposed to give that time to God. I like to maximize it. I like to make it a whole week, you know, because the whole point of the thing was that the lunar cycle, Jesus died and was resurrected 3 days later. Each zodiacal sign is roughly 3 days for the lunar
Mhm.
cycle. I like to maximize it. I like to give a little bit more. Um, and I think that it really helps. I think it really does make a difference. So I
Now, when
like to,
you say
yeah,
do these things, you're talking about, I'm sorry, Matt,
yeah.
you're
Go ahead.
talking about, just to reiterate for people, when you say do these things during this time, number one, you can check your moon cycle on Google.
Hmm.
But when you figure out that time frame based on the day that you're born, uh, you can see when your moon cycle is on that time.
Yep.
Then a few days before and a few days after, for the 2.5 roughly days, you're before and after, you want to start doing things like meditation,
Yep.
yoga, if you're not
Yep.
doing it all the time,
Right.
um, yoga, and it also goes a little deeper than that, right?
Yes.
You don't want to harm people. You don't want to act in anger and stuff
You
like
need
that
to
too,
avoid
right?
all, yes, exactly right, Dylan. You need to avoid as many negative, low vibrating things as possible. That means emotions, desires, anything having to do with the mental, spiritual, soul planes of existence. You want to
Animal
be,
urges like sex.
yes,
Yeah.
no urges like sex. So you have to dispel sex. Now, with that being said, it gets a little complicated because what you can do is you can have kundalini kama sutra type sex with your partner. This really only works if you're male and female partnership, but you can have Kundalini rising sex with a partner, and as long as nobody is orgasming, that's actually okay. But that's way harder said than
There's a
done.
lot of books on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of books
Yeah.
on that. That's way harder said than done. A lot of people fail,
Yeah.
and it's not. I get a very low success rate. I'm just going to chalk that up to the way that people have been living their lives for like the last few decades. But yes, you can have sex, but you cannot orgasm. There's a big
Yeah.
difference between those keywords. A lot of people don't get the difference, but that's the way that I'm going to say it. But yes, what am I talking about with doing these things? Thank you for steering me back on topic because I need that. I'm all over the place
It's
otherwise.
okay.
Um, you need to eat right. You need to, and by eating right, I mean you should mainly have a diet that consists of fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Olive oil is okay. Pink Himalayan salt is okay. You want to stay with the high vibrating, alkaline, fresh foods. That's
And
what you
just a
want.
side note on the food. So if you're not familiar with high vibrating or frequency food and all that, imagine food that's really dense, right? Like, or in the dark, or heavy meats. You take on energy from the meat or the animal, especially if they were living in stress or anxiety or chemicals. Uh, Now, foods made of light, a high vibrating. Imagine that they are made of light. The plants and the nuts and the fruits and all that stuff, they're made from light of God. So naturally, there's no right or wrong. But if you're trying to go in a spiritual path or learn how to raise your vibration or be in love or light, well, naturally, you want to steer towards foods that are made of light.
Exactly.
It just depends on your motive for life. Of
Yep.
course, eat meat and do whatever you want. But if you're trying to obtain this enlightenment,
Hmm.
you want to eat foods made of light. Okay.
Exactly.
So,
Another big thing, now that we're on the topic of mouth-related things like food, you want to keep your tongue to the roof of your mouth. This is a big one. A lot of people call this mewing. What this does is it activates the what is it, the lunar ganglion or the sublunar
mm,
ganglion? I can't remember what it's called, but it's called a lunar ganglion for a reason. It's because of when the moon activates this nerve in basically the mid part of your head. Put I can't
mm,
show it on camera. You put the tongue on the roof of your mouth, and basically what
mm,
this does is it assists in drawing blood flow and energy upwards, um, just through like different musculatures that form, and it activates this ganglion, which basically
mm,
acts as a magnet. It pulls this stuff up. Then you combine that with avoiding negative things like emotions, avoiding negative people, et cetera, et cetera. Don't go doing something risky like trying to make a lot of money, or something like that's going to cause you like a massive amount of stress, like don't play the stock market or what have you.
Mhm.
You could, but just don't do something that's going to stress you out. You have to understand yourself, right? Like if you can do all those things and not get stressed out, then go for it. Don't play like angry video games if you're a guy. You know what? I hear it all. Read books, sit in nature, meditate, do yoga, stay high vibes. That's the time that you got to stay high vibes. Most of the time for women, if they're following the moon, they can do it that way. But I think women actually are really special, and I think that they can take advantage of this even further because I've talked with women who do sacred secretion, and they also have started incorporating it during their menstrual cycle specifically, not ovulation. Ovulation is when they take
Mhm.
their days off, but not just with the moon stuff, but on their menstrual cycle, they can actually do these exact same things, and it works a lot better. You know, because the whole stereotype is, oh, eat your chocolate and have your sex and do whatever you want when you're menstruating, so you feel better. No, your body's making a sacrifice right now. In fact, when you're during your sacred secretion, it's probably where you're going to feel the lowest. You're going to feel the angriest. You're going to feel the saddest. You're going to feel the horniest, even. Some guys tell me, like, dude, I just can't do it. Like, I don't know what it is, but the energy is so bad. Like, I need it. It's like, no, you don't. It's mind over matter for a reason. Um, so essentially, yeah, if you track these lunar placements, but it was as I was saying earlier in the podcast, once you get to a specific point, you'll actually overcome the planetary necessity. You'll actually, and this is of course my theory. I think that the planets still do make a big difference. I think they act as like portal openings for your body to have this energy flow in. But once you've activated it a number of times, I felt like I could do this after about like a year and a half to 2 years of really experimenting with this and doing this every single month as best as I could. Then I got to a point where I was like, oh, I feel like if I just do this, a sporadic period, my body will get so acclimated to that process that I can activate it multiple times in a lunar cycle. Not just when the moon is in my sun sign. But that's of course just some theoretical things that we're working on now, based off of all the feedback. I mean, I've probably taught sacred secretion personally to over 100 people now in my personal life, let alone the tens of thousands of people that the videos teach and everything else, or the book that we have. So that's basically where my head goes with your question on that. Sacred secretion definitely have to be high vibes. And to the case in point, I don't eat a lot of animal products, but when I do, I try to make sure that they're very clean and they're coming from good sources. But I do eat animal products, and the reason that I do is because I think that they are a good way to get certain minerals, certain nutrients. Because I see a lot of people who are vegan. I tried being vegan for 4 months. It was great. I really loved it, but after a while, I could feel my energy was way too high. My physical body couldn't keep up, and I feel like this is why I get the complaint from vegans a lot that they're very tired sometimes. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, and even if you're not vegan, if you're going for just the high energy all the time, you'll get migraines. You'll start to get headaches. There are going to be things that happen. If you're not balancing that out. And what do I mean by balancing? Like, I don't know, maybe take like 2 days back to back out of each lunar
Mhm.
cycle, each month, 2 days where you can just have fun. I plan it so that when it's the opposite of my sacred secretion time, like 2 weeks after my sacred secretion time, that's kind of where, like, I'm kind of open to doing pretty much anything. Now I don't really drink at all. I might have like a glass of wine or something here and there. I don't do drugs. I don't condone that. I have performed shamanistic rituals for people with marijuana, mushrooms, DMT, things of that nature. But I haven't done DMT, and I haven't done mushrooms in well over a year, maybe a year and a half. And I haven't done DMT except the one time. So I very much know myself. I don't need those types of things. I think that it helps a lot of people if you help if people want to kind of awaken their consciousness in that sense. But I don't
Right.
think it's a necessity for everybody. And the other thing I will say about sacred secretion is, um, I think one of the big reasons it was kept a secret was because if people don't utilize it properly, it gets dangerous. People can actually really screw up the energy balance in their bodies. I have not ran into too many people who do this, but I have gotten one or two people who have said, "Yeah, like I started having a really bad, horrible, traumatic experience. The energy was in my head. I was super scared. I was super frightened." Again, this is not the status quo, and those two individuals had a lot of trauma stored in their chakras, their nervous system. They were fight or flight mode the whole time, you have to really work on yourself and overcome a lot of those mental and spiritual barriers before you can really get deep into this. And I think that's why certain
Yeah.
people like us are drawn to it, whereas other people aren't. But that's ultimately my whole spiel. I know I talk a lot. I'm very sorry. I've been
No,
talking
Matt.
a lot.
Yeah, Matt. So thank you for all of that stuff. So basically, in a nutshell, uh, there is a time of the month that you can access some of these chemicals, and the sacred secretion is an oil that will travel down your spinal column, 33 vertebrae, the
Hmm.
life of Christ.
Jacob's ladder. Yep.
And when it gets down in there, you can, uh, be a loving awareness in your life, be um, positive, love, try not to harm things, eat
Hmm.
food of light, meditate, use yoga to move your body, move energy. And I even incorporated Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation. He uses a pineal gland meditation where you are consciously pulling and squeezing energy up your body, up your spine, with your awareness focused on the top of your head.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that's great, learning that there's times of the month that are better for doing this. But ultimately, man, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're going to wrap up here, but I think the goal for this is realizing that when you start activating these parts of your body, you are restoring DNA, you are adding telomeres to your life.
Yes. Telomeres, big
You
thing.
are, you can literally change your body, your life, just like a placebo effect. When somebody takes a sugar pill, an innate substance, and they believe that they're taking a real substance, 6 to 8 weeks later, they
Hmm.
can have a physical change in their body by believing they're taking a real substance.
Hmm.
You have the power to change your life, your body, and others around you, so within, or as within, so without. Your life is a reflection of your inner body and your alchemized chemicals.
Hmm.
And by focusing your attention on wanting to do this or even taking this path, if you've listened to this to the end, I strongly recommend getting this book. So I just want to ask Matt, where can people check you out, and how can they get this book?
Great question. So the book itself, we have it on Amazon, we have it on Barnes and Noble, and we have it on BookBaby. We have it on pretty much a whole wide variety of websites. Walmart and Target even sell it. Um, if you're struggling to find a copy that's in stock, you can go to bookbaby.com. They always have it in stock, and that's actually the best way that we make the most profit. But for us, I didn't want to sell the book, just as a side note. I wanted it to be free, but if you make it free, nobody reads it. So to publish it, it alone, it costs like $75 per book. So it's kind of expensive. It's $100 for each copy, but the book itself is like 800 pages, and it's going to save you probably like 20 grand worth of books that you would have to buy in order to read it anyway. I'm speaking from personal experience because I have a pretty wide library full of pretty expensive books that you normally can't get, and I've had to buy them on eBay and stuff. Anyway, and then if you want to check us out and you want to follow our social media, we are Psycosmos or Team Psycosmos, either or. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, and we're on TikTok as well. On TikTok, we're Psycosmos. On YouTube, we're both Psycosmos and Team Psycosmos. On Instagram, we're Team Psycosmos. But either way, it's all the same thing. And yeah, you can just find us that way and follow us. And then Dylan, why don't you share for my followers as well how they can find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. You can go to Plug Into Your Life, and Facebook, Instagram. Just starting a TikTok thing, but you can check me out there. But it's Dylan Ewing, and yeah, thanks for that, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put the links all down below as well.
Same.
And love it, dude. So yeah, guys, I think ultimately my entire life, or seeking the truth, has led to the realization that there is a cluster of knowledge that has been so well kept from humanity for so many centuries that is now coming out
Mm,
because of technology. And I think that there's a great awakening happening, and all the information is for free online. And I'm gonna tell you, there's no amount of money that I could spend to that I wouldn't spend to know this truth, because when you come to the realization that how powerful you are, you can create the life that you want, you can manifest anything you want, you can literally have anything,
mhm,
and your mind is the only limitation you have on your life.
mhm, mhm.
And there has been great strides to protect this information. And here it is. Check out the book. And Matt, man, I just want to say thank you so much for being on here, and keep doing what you guys are doing.
Thank you. You as well. Yeah, I love what you're doing as well. Gratitude, super important. I want to say thank you again, Dylan.
Yes.
Gratitude's great for sacred secretion. It's great for your personal life. It's great for raising your vibrations, and it's also great for manifesting. Gratitude. Be thankful for what you have at each and every day. Be thankful for that breath of life that you're breathing every single moment. And I'm grateful for my friend Dylan who invited me on his podcast today. So thank
Thanks,
you,
Matt.
Dylan. Of course.
All right, guys, and to the whole team there, just want to
Mhm.
say thank all of you guys and for this information and this research and the effort you've put in to create this book for
Of
everyone,
course.
saving them years off of their life to have it all in one little book,
Yep.
or nice size book.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it's a big book. You can bring it on a
yeah.
plane, and it's like it's like a legal weapon, if you have to go flying somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right,
yeah.
guys. Well, plug into your life and transform from the inside out. I'll see you guys next time.
Love it. Take care.